Just at 5, 10 News with Tracey Spicer.
This day has brought terrible news. The Columbia is lost. There are no survivors.
The Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrates just minutes from home. Tonight, a special report on an event that has stunned the world. Good evening. Worldwide shock tonight at yet another Space Shuttle disaster. The Columbia, rocketing at 20,000 kilometres an hour, burst apart, seemingly in slow motion, just 16 minutes from home base. Many experts now believe the shuttle was doomed shortly after takeoff.
The shuttle Columbia broke up in the skies over Texas, a trail of thick white smoke scarring the blue as debris fell to Earth.
Space shuttle flying over, leaving a brilliant... Wow.
Columbia was travelling at about 20,000 kilometres an hour, 61 kilometres above central Texas, when it ran into trouble on re-entry. Mission Control lost contact at 1 a.m. Australian Eastern Time as Houston talked to Shuttle Commander Rick Husband.
And Columbia, Houston, we see your tire pressure messages and we did not copy your last.
Roger.
5 men and 2 women astronauts on board perished.
Great, Miles. We're having a great time up here. We had a great ride to orbit.
The White House immediately dismissed a terrorist act. President Bush addressed a nation in mourning.
The crew of the shuttle Columbia did not return safely to Earth. Yet we can pray that all are safely home.
Mission and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia with
Known as the Old Lady of NASA, Columbia launched on 28 missions in 22 years, but NASA says it was a flawless flight. But 16 minutes before touchdown, the first sign of trouble, a loss of temperature sensors in the shuttle's left wing.
They were followed seconds and minutes later by several other problems, including loss of tire pressure indications on the left main gear, and then indications of excessive structural heating.
At takeoff, a piece of foam insulation fell off the shuttle's fuel tank and hit the orbiter's wing. NASA says it's not a smoking gun, but it can't discount a connection to the disaster. The astronauts' remains have been found in the debris field, which is spread over a 420-kilometre area in Texas and Louisiana. This mission uniform patch landed on Earth intact. The FBI is working to recover everything and has urged those with home video or still photos to hand them in to authorities as NASA searches for an answer to this tragedy.
And Michelle Stone joins us live now from 10's US Bureau. Michelle, at this early stage, what are investigators saying about the cause of the disaster?
Well, like the Shuttle Challenger disaster, it could be months before the real cause is determined, but the strongest theory to emerge yet is that when that foam insulation came loose, it actually damaged the thermal tiles on the shuttle, and those weakened tiles upon re-entry began to fall off, causing the shuttle to heat up and break apart.
And you mentioned in your report that the debris is spread over hundreds, perhaps thousands of kilometres.
The debris field could be as far west as California, as far east as Arkansas, a massive area. Now, all the information to the cause will be in that debris, and a lot of it is in very good condition. But there's been a disturbing report emerge from the FBI that some people are reportedly trying to sell pieces of the debris on the website eBay. Now, eBay has committed to yank those advertisements as soon as they appear because it's a federal offence here to both steal federal property, and it would be also possibly perceived as interfering with a federal investigation.
Thanks, Michelle. Reporter Michelle Stone in 10's US Bureau. The loss of the Columbia crew has been a blow for a number of countries. The team included the first ever astronauts from Israel and India, which treated them as national heroes.
Walking to a fate unknown, the crew of the Shuttle Columbia just 2 weeks ago as they boarded their craft. On board, they looked forward to the greatest mission of their lives. The astronauts included Israel's first man in space, Colonel Ilan Ramon. His father, after taking condolence calls, offered a brief statement. Not so long ago, he says, we sat next to each other and didn't expect what was going to happen. Colonel Ramon came from a family of Holocaust survivors. On Columbia, he carried a pencil drawing by a Jewish boy from the Auschwitz death camp. It was titled Moon Landscape. He saw his space journey as the fulfillment of that boy's dream.
I was talking to a lot of, for instance, Holocaust survivors, and you tell them that you're going to be in space as an Israeli astronaut. They look at you as a dream that they could have never dreamed of.
Indian-born mission specialist Kalpana Chawla was a hero to a nation, earning a degree in aeronautical engineering before moving to the US to join NASA. She featured almost daily in her spacesuit in the Indian media. Today, stunned family members held prayers for her soul. Shuttle Commander Rick Husband had never had any question about his chosen profession. He knew as a child that he wanted to go into space.
Well, from the time I was about 4 years old, I wanted to be an astronaut. And it was about that time when the Mercury program started up. And so I saw those things on the TV, and it just really excited me.
Rick Husband was married with 2 children. Pilot William McCool was on his first flight into space. A former test pilot, he was responsible for manoeuvring the shuttle during its numerous scientific experiments. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Michael Anderson was Columbia's payload commander. Married with 2 children, Anderson was the son of an Air Force pilot. He'd been in space once before on a 1998 flight to the space station Mir. Mission specialist David Brown was a US Navy captain. A pilot and a flight surgeon, he became an astronaut in 1996 and was making his first trip into space. Columbia's other mission specialist was Laurel Clark, a US Navy commander, flight surgeon and mother to an 8-year-old boy. She served aboard submarines before becoming an astronaut. Dr. Clark spoke from the shuttle just hours before Columbia lost communications with NASA ground controllers.
Well, good morning, Houston. We're getting ready for a big day up here. Had a great time on orbit and really excited to come back home.
The disintegration of Columbia is the second disaster in NASA's shuttle program. However, officials insist the project will continue.
It's almost 17 years to the day that Space Shuttle Challenger burst into flames 1 minute after takeoff, killing all 7 on board. A leak in one of its booster rockets was to blame, the tragedy sparking a 2-year suspension of the shuttle program, allowing NASA officials to revise launch procedures.
Well, the Challenger disaster did instigate a review of what NASA was doing in general, and they made some big policy decisions not to launch commercial spacecraft, not to launch scientific spacecraft using the shuttle, but instead to use the unmanned vehicles. And so this time, I think probably the main change to the policy is going to be whether the International Space Station continues or not.
Currently on board that space station are 3 astronauts who've relied on the shuttle program to deliver equipment and supplies. NASA says the trio, who've been in orbit for just over 2 months, have enough reserves to keep them going until the end of June. But a Russian rocket, scheduled to leave tomorrow for the space station, will have its contents reviewed. It's likely the astronauts will have to come back to Earth using an emergency escape pod. Despite the 2 catastrophes, NASA's adamant its shuttle program will continue.
We're going to fix this problem. We're going to get back on the launch pad. We're going to launch shuttles again as soon as we're ready. The training is going to continue. The best therapy in this business is to get on with your job.
Melody Horrell, 10 News.
The Columbia disaster has also affected Australia, which had developed a key scientific experiment on board. The so-called Spidernauts project had the potential to revolutionise space exploration.
Elation 16 days ago when Australia's first microgravity research team, made up of Glen Waverley Secondary College students, watched the launch of Columbia. On board were 8 garden orb spiders they'd sent into space to test the effects of zero gravity on webs. Today, the anticipation turned to despair as the Australian researchers struggled to learn why communication had been lost just minutes before touchdown.
I called the US, and the moment the person picked up the phone, I could hear screaming and wailing in the background, and I knew what the answer was going to be, and it was just devastating.
For the students and teachers, a heartbreaking end to a 4-year project constantly plagued by delays and funding difficulties.
very exciting for the kids to finally get over there and see their mission launched into space, and then to have this happen, it's just unbelievable.
Of the 80 experiments on board Columbia, the Australian project was the most eagerly anticipated by the international science community because of its implications for future space exploration.
Obviously, we wanted to get the spiders back. We wanted to get the samples of spider that was spun in space back. But today, I think all we'd like back are those astronauts.
Australia flying American flags at half-mast as a mark of respect.
I'm quite sure that the spirit of that country will ensure that, despite this setback, space exploration goes on undaunted.
Kelly Morgan, 10 News.